Warning, the following movies are considered extremely graphic.
Excuse me? I'm an adult film actor.
They're also underrated and highly unusual.
That's a twist.
Tubi just added most of them, meaning you can catch them for free on Tubi right now. I've also listed out some other places currently hosting these same movies, but 4 of the Apocalypse is a grim Western movie that I do not recommend for everybody, but it's a wild one. It's from a famous Italian horror director, Lucio Fulci, who did a bunch of zombie movies I really love. This is a spaghetti Western, but it's pretty brutal. If anything, it's like the Clockwork Orange of spaghetti westerns. Right now you can find it on Tubi, Pluto TV, or Arrow. If you're catching this video in the future, these movies are likely available on different streaming services, because that's how it works nowadays. But I do not necessarily recommend this for spaghetti western fans. For anyone who clicked on this trying to discover something kind of new and interesting, this one may scratch that itch. So will my next one, which is a much more recently released movie, but it's got a real bizarre pace to it. It's kind of unlike anything else. It's titled She Dies Tomorrow. Now this is basically a horror movie, but it's much more of a concept than anything else. There's actually not very much story unfolding in She Dies Tomorrow, but there's one hell of a concept that unfolds. Yes, it's dark, it's macabre, but not in an overbearing way. If anything, this one's kind of psychedelic and trippy. But I found it interesting. I mean, it took me a while to kind of realize what's actually happening, and when I hooked into this movie, I was into it. I feel like they could have pushed it, and they could have done quite a lot more with the concept, but as it stands, it's kind of a trippy art house flick that, again, has something interesting going on at its core, not necessarily a whole lot else. Now, Justin Long and Donald Faison, yes, Donald Faison from Scrubs, star in my next movie, which also has a really trippy concept. It's titled The Wave. Now, this one is about a drug, sort of. It's about a lot more than that, but the presentation of the movie here is that of like an acid trip. Justin Long, he goes to outer space, man, in this movie. It does have a story, but it's going to constantly put you in different places. I will say, if you watch the trailer, which I don't necessarily recommend when I'm recommending movies, but if you do watch the trailer to The Wave, it's pretty deceiving, but only because this movie is so strange and unique. It's just not really going to meet any expectations that you have going into it. For instance, you might expect it to be kind of funny with Justin Long and Don Faison, but it's really not. Now, the next movie on this list is kind of a wild one that stars Alexandra Daddario and Johnny Knoxville in a really bizarre role. But before that, I want to talk directly to the people watching who have not been getting good sleep routinely, because today's sponsor, Dream by Beam, can definitely help you with that. And that's because Dream is a luxurious drink mixture loaded with the best sleep-promoting ingredients. It's a powder that you mix with a bit of warm milk or water about 30 minutes to an hour before bed. I typically enjoy mine about halfway through my last movie of the day. Dream has been shown to help you fall asleep faster, stay asleep, and most importantly, wake up feeling refreshed. There's no point in taking a sleep aid that makes you feel groggy in the morning. And I enjoy drinking Beam before bed on occasion, even though I'm not someone with chronic sleep troubles. In fact, I tend to get to sleep just fine, but as I've gotten older and now I have children, there are multiple reasons that might wake me up in the middle of the night, and on the nights when I've not had any Dream, I do find it more difficult to go back to sleep, and I don't wake up feeling quite as fresh. Dream comes available in a bunch of different flavors. The original is kind of a cocoa cinnamon flavor, but they've got chocolate peanut butter, chocolate mint, chocolate brownie. It's also gluten-free, dairy-free with no GMOs, no added sugars, and no artificial flavors. So get the sleep you deserve. Get up to 35% off when you follow my link down in the video description, or just go to shopbeam.com/flick. You can even follow this QR code. Again, that's 35% off, something that's going to help get you some quality sleep. That's why I recommend it. But speaking of things I recommend, let's get back to the movies. As I said, Alexandra Daddario stars in this really bizarre horror movie. It's titled We Summon the Darkness. And it's got a cool setup. You just follow a bunch of teenagers going to a metal concert. It's in like the late 80s, early 90s. There's weird stuff on the radio about cults killing people, which was a thing in the news back during this time. Boys and girls meet up. They go back to kind of hang out, Netflix and chill, or whatever they used to call it back then. And these girls are not what they seem. There's a big surprise that happens fairly early on in the movie, and it just has a crazy tone after that. Nothing earth-shattering here. This one's kind of a horror comedy. It's not loaded with laughs, but the concept and the predicaments and everything are all really fun and kind of light. It's a little bloody, but again, you got Johnny Knoxville. He makes an appearance in this that is totally appropriate, like it actually works for this movie. This is just a fun watch. I actually recommend this one around Halloween time. It's a fun slasher movie. I don't know how else to put it. Another fun, I guess you could say, I'm not gonna call Terrifier fun. It's brutal. It's brutal. But Terrifier 2 is a pretty legit flick. Now, years ago, when this channel was very young, I used to recommend Terrifier all the time. I like to think I maybe had a little bit to do with the success of the first movie, but these things have just taken off. Terrifier 2 in particular just, broke barriers for a movie like this. It is one of the most brutal things to have been released in theaters en masse, potentially ever. I don't know what the numbers are. It's up there in terms of how graphic it is and how large of an audience it has reached, and for fairly good reason. Terrifier 2 is an epic slasher movie. Not only is it brutal, but it's long. It goes into just wild directions. It's exhausting. But for people who are really into that sort of thing, Terrifier 2 has it all. I've never done this before. Looking at my list, I'm switching. Terrifier 2 is now above my next pick, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Now, this is an interesting one. This is billed as a horror movie, but it is commentary on millennials. It's in a way that I'm shocked to see, honestly. I thought maybe it would be another few years before we saw him get roasted this well in a modern day movie, but they really do go for it. Now, you do have to get into it in order to really appreciate that. You've got a bunch of young people, they're fresh out of college, they're all partying in this big mansion during a hurricane. It's a hurricane party, in fact. And when something horrific happens to one of them, you get kind of a pseudo-murder mystery, but instead of a typical murder mystery, these kids just start ripping into each other. Not literally, but verbally. They really start berating each other in a bunch of different ways, and it's actually quite shocking. But if you're not into it, it really just seems like you've got 20-somethings just screaming at each other the whole time. If you start to tap into how it's written and what they're actually saying, again, I was shocked they put some of this stuff in a movie today. The movie also happens to be quite a bit of fun, but as the title would suggest, there is a body count.
You're always gaslighting me. Relax, relax. You're silencing me. I can't believe you're making this about you.
Okay, my next one's a bizarre one, and it comes from the son of one of the weirdest directors of all time, David Cronenberg. His son, though, Brandon Cronenberg, is on a tear right now, and his second to last movie, Possessor, is available on Tubi.
Me out.
Now, this is kind of a sci-fi horror movie, but based on the plot alone, you would not expect the horror elements. They're more psychological than anything else. But this takes place in the future. There's this new technology that allows someone to sort of remotely possess another person. This is then used to carry out assassinations and what have you. So pretty rad setup right off the bat. And then Cronenberg directs a really glossy, slick movie that hinges on some really heavy performances as well. I love the style of this movie. It has some brutal moments in it. Yes, it's not pervasive through the whole thing, but the story is really interesting too. It's like an old Twilight Zone episode or something, but just way more intense and heavy. If you clicked on this video wanting something that really kind of pushes some limits, I will say Terrifier 2 definitely does that, and so does my next pick, Titane. Now, not only is this a visually stunning movie, but it is a shocker. If you were to read the synopsis on IMDb, a woman is impregnated by a car in this movie. That bit is actually not nearly as graphic as you might think, but the movie itself is. Now, not only is she impregnated by this like Cadillac from hell, but she goes on this murder spree that's quite gruesome. There's also some really bizarre like trans identity stuff in this movie that I still to this day, I'm not quite sure what they were trying to say with those elements in this movie, but the cinematography is unbelievable in this movie. The storytelling is absolutely unhinged, and this is not just a make you feel weird kind of movie, even though it definitely does that. There's some really interesting things happening here. The father character is how I'm gonna put it. His story and backstory is all really interesting once he comes into play, so there's a lot happening with this one. This director previously did a movie titled Raw that I've also recommended here on the channel, and I think Titane took things to another level. It is just an absolutely insane flick. I'll soften things up with my next pick, which is a fun one. It really is. It is a werewolf movie with some really gruesome moments in it, but the gruesome moments are few and far between in The Wolf of Snow Hollow.
Let me just make this perfectly clear. There is no such thing as werewolves. Our killer is a guy, and I'm gonna find him, and I'm gonna kill, and we're gonna bring him to justice.
Now this movie is written and directed by Jim Cummings. He's also the main character. Very funny actor and talented filmmaker. So in this movie, a series of murders occur and people will start to begin to believe that it's a werewolf. There's actually quite a lot of evidence to suggest that there's a werewolf on the loose, and his character is gradually just completely losing his shit as they basically just cannot solve these murders. They've got no suspects, and he's literally losing his mind, and it's almost Curb Your Enthusiasm levels of comedy coming out of his performance inside of a really well-written and well-directed werewolf crime mystery movie. It's excellent stuff. And then my number one pick is, let me see. Yep. My number one pick, I just bought on Blu-ray. I don't even buy Blu-rays that often anymore. And I bought it because I'd been dying to see it a second time, and it was not available on any streaming services that I could find for months and months and months and months and months. Red Rocket.
No, I'm calling the cops. 10, 9, 8, 7, faster.
I'm technically off the property, so you can't call the cops because I'm on public land, respecting your boundaries.
Now this is from writer-director Sean Baker, who just won a bunch of Academy Awards for his latest film, Honora, which I also really liked. But Red Rocket revolves around an ex-male porn star who is basically just out on his ass. He's got nothing on him. He's completely destitute, and he rolls back into this small Texas town to try to put his life back together, and all the people he used to know from his life want nothing to do with this guy. Now, Simon Rex plays the main character. It is a career best performance. He's probably not ever gonna do any better. It's amazing.
He fucker punched me. I would 100% out cardio that guy.
It's funny, it's genuine. He feels like people I've met countless times in my life. I loved it. But then a lot of the other people in this movie are real people, meaning like they're not actors. It's all filmed in real locations and has this really great spark to it. I love this movie, but it's like a Scorsese movie. It's fairly plotless. I mean, he's just trying to put his life back together while also simultaneously destroying everything that he's doing to put his life back together. And he's such an off-putting character that you actually enjoy watching him just ruin everything around him. It's a real treat of a movie, especially for anyone that likes little art house films like this. If you hadn't seen anything funny in a while, not only is this one funny, but it's also very graphic at times and has quite a bit to say as well. Like there's some upsetting stuff in the movie and some thought-provoking things, but it's also a real hoot of a movie.
Before long, it'll be like we're still married.
We are still married.
I hope you found something to watch. Don't forget that these movies are not only available on Tubi. Even though I'm showing you the list here at the end of this video, I always put the list down in the top pinned comment, along with where you might be able to stream these movies in Canada, the UK, and Australia. Don't forget to go check out the Beam link down in the video description below to start getting some better sleep. But I'll keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this Tubi episode, and you will see me on the next one.